Before we start off with our first speaker, I'm going to give you a short introduction to the session. I'm Eham Arora, and I'm a part of the AWRSC Young Turks. And what you're viewing right now is the first Young Turk session dedicated to questions and queries that an early career surgeon is going to have when they are starting practice. We all know there are certain topics that people aren't going to be discussing very freely when they go out and start work. One of which is, how do you set up or be part of a successful group practice? What sort of insurance do you need? What sort of liabilities are you going to have? What are the reasonable opportunities about traveling abroad? How do you find a good mentor? What are issues that women face in the surgical scene in our country? So we're going to be having these sessions fairly regularly, every 3 to 4 weeks. We'll hit upon maybe 3 or 4 topics per session, and I'm really hopeful that you guys can get some value out of it. Our first speaker is Dr. Nandakishore Dukkipati, a friend from Hyderabad, who's been running a group practice for quite a few years. I'm personally really looking forward to his lecture because in the part of the country that I'm at, we don't really know too much about group practices, but it definitely seems to have a lot of upsides. NK, over to you.
Yep. Thank you, Eham, and it's wonderful to be on the Young Turks, the platform. So I understand that there's a lot of burning questions. Actually, we do have a group practice that has been going on for some time. Now, group has just grown bigger with Dr. Ankit Mishra just joining us. So I'm just going to go ahead and start my presentation with sharing my slides, and then we'll go through this. So that's me. Currently, I am the managing director for Live Life Hospitals. It's our own group. Also, I serve as clinical director and chief surgeon at KIMS Live Life Center. So let's jump into it without further ado. Is that just look at the thing is that whenever you decide to travel solo, which is your solo practice, being responsible for yourself, it is inevitable you would discover that how capable you really are. Okay, so that is like an acid test, because in solo practice you're like a one-man army. The day starts and ends with you. Okay, couple of things that you need to look into if you're planning to venture out into a solo practice is that whether it is going to be a hospital based or it is going to be your own. If it's going to be your own, have you your own infrastructure, or have you inherited infrastructure from your your father or your father or in-laws? So wherever it is, if you're getting the infrastructure or if you're able to lease it out, these are the things that make a big difference. Because as a solo practitioner, as you're coming out, you're fresh, you want to set up your own practice, and setting up all the infrastructure can be very challenging in the very get-go. Because there are a lot of nuances, a lot of statutories, a lot of permissions, a lot of compliances, which can get really over your head and make it a very troublesome venture for you guys. So what I would suggest is that all of you, whoever is planning to get into, if you're planning to get into solo practice, let's start with the hospital. Learn and understand the nuances of setting up a practice, and also all the back-end caveats of things. So once you understand that, once you're well equipped, at least you think you're well equipped, then you step out. Even then you'll find that there are some areas where you're inadequate, but yet you can at least 60 to 70%, if you're able to manage, that'll be wonderful. So if it is a hospital-based solo practice, either you are employed by the hospital or hospital gives you a salary guarantee, or you're an honorary surgeon. So either ways, you're a single man running your practice. You may have your own office on the side note where you see your patients, and you're at your liberty to take your patients to any hospitals wherever you want and operate on them based on the patient affordability or your choices or availability of equipment. These are the options. A lot of flexibility exists in solo practice. If you have your own existing system, if you have infrastructure, you have your own hospital theater, ICU, beds, etc., then all the revenue comes to you. You don't no longer share the revenue with a hospital system, because most of the hospitals, if 100 rupees is your package, they technically take around 80 rupees and they let you have like 20 rupees. So that 80 rupees part is gone into the infrastructure, the equipment, the material, so on and so forth. So if you own the system, then you tend to capture that part also. The actual expenditure anyway goes out, but remaining stays with you. But at the same time, all the cost that comes with in running a practice also comes to you. So definitely, When you're a solo practitioner, you have a lot of freedom of choice. You want to pick up bariatric, you want to practice only bariatric, that's your choice. If you want to do AWR, if you want to do anorectal or a breast-based surgery based on if you're a lady surgeon, and if you want to do something else, like altogether, if you want to incorporate like a cosmetic practice into your practice, and if you want to do a non-surgical weight loss methodology or a nutritional program, you name it, anything you can add without discussing with anyone else, you just look at the merits and demerits and you assimilate all that into your practice. A lot of freedom exists. Okay, and I've enjoyed that for quite a few years before I just got into this group practice mode, right? So definitely you don't share your revenue with anyone else. And directional practice, where you want to go, what you want to purchase. If you want to buy a 4K system, if you can afford it, go for it. No, you don't have to take anyone's permission for that. Also the spending pattern, whether you want to spend your money on digital marketing or a print media or a TV show, whatever you want to enhance your own practice, you are the boss, you take the call, you make the decision, but you pay for it too. So you need to be very cognizant of that fact, because no one else is coming behind you to cover your costs. And malpractice insurance, I think Eham was just raising the topic. Malpractice insurance for any doctor today in India, you have to have at least 1 crore of coverage minimum. That is a new minimum. And there are ways you can plan your malpractice insurance. If you take 1 crore, let them cover 3 or 4 events. That means each event gets either 33 lakhs or 25 lakhs of coverage. So if you take 1 CR, but a single event, the 1 CR goes to one event, but the next event you're not covered. So these are the back end things which we will hopefully cover in another talk, which talks about the malpractice insurance per se. But that malpractice insurance premium is an expense that would come to you. Also, litigation. A lot of times what we do in a solo practice, you're trying to convert a patient into a surgery all the time. So a lot of times people fall into a habit over a course of time, into a habit of sugarcoating things and not giving enough information. Let us talk about just doing a simple gallbladder surgery. A lot of times you'll say, this is a simple procedure, it's done every day. We do it almost every other day, not a big deal. You just come in half an hour, I'm done with the surgery. Next day you go home, all is fair and good. But people don't spend enough time to talk about what can potentially happen. Some of you may do, some of you may not. So I'm talking about the people that who do not. You have to discuss about, the anatomical variations, possible ductal injury, possible cystic duct leak, maybe retained stones. May not be to that extent. At least you need to make them aware that these are the things that are potentially possible. And you can throw in a little tidbit saying that, yeah, these are all there in the textbook, but I'm having to tell you that. But technically, we don't see them, all these kind of things. So you can cover it up like that, but do not explain all these things to the patient, because you have to have an exit strategy. The more you explain, the more exit strategies you will get in any given circumstances, right? Also, the practice cost in a solo practice, entire practice cost. If you're renting a premise, the cost of the premises, the overheads, upkeep, the janitorial, the nursing staff, the secretarial staff, you name it, the software, everything else comes into your pocket. Okay, so only when you cover all these expenditures will you make any money. So solo practice, that is what you need to know. And one of the important things when you look at the quality of life of a surgeon is that in a solo practice, you don't have ready support. Let's say if you're in the middle of a surgery, you want someone to help you out. You need a second pair of hands. You don't have that, okay? Especially if you're in your own solo setup. If you're in a hospital base, maybe you can request someone to come in and join you. So you don't have any time off, truly speaking, because time off is equivalent to no revenue. So if you're not there physically present and operating, that is, we're talking about surgical practices. If you're not there operating, you do not make money. If you want to take a week off or 10 days off and go out into a nice vacation in Europe and come back, believe me, all the costs are waiting for you, okay? And you'll be inundated with a lot of mundane tasks. Let's say even if your janitorial staff doesn't show up that day, they call in sick. It's your job. You have to find out who is going to cover that part of the work in that clinic. So there's a lot of anxiety. And also, as a solo practitioner, you're vulnerable to adverse events, meaning somebody writes something, some bad comment about you on the net. So you have to fight that. You got a bad review on Google. You have to fight that. So there is a frivolous lawsuit. You'll have to fight that. And a lot of things like that. Let's say you sent investigations, and then the lab you are connected with, they have given the blood group wrong, and then you ended up blood transfusion, and then there's a complication there. A lot of little things happen in a solo practice, and all these things can affect your practice directly. So whenever such adverse events happen, your practice goes down the tube, and that, but the costs remain, your income potential comes down. So you need to be very careful with these things, okay? And your advanced learning suffers. If you want to take a week, 10 days off, go and learn some advanced procedure. So you cannot really take time off and then go do all these things. In a solo practice, what it offers you are tons of freedom. Also, it means a lot of hours, number of hours you would spend in building your practice. It is very rewarding if you can do that. But for young practitioner who's coming out, or just out there trying to make your mark, solo practice should not be a cup of tea at this stage, in this particular environment of medical surgical practices in India. Okay, so definitely you would want to have additional people to help you out in and out of theater, to plan how to go out and do an event, or connect with other practitioners, referral sources, all these things. You're very limited because you're a single man trying to do everything. Okay, but if everything succeeds, you will make a huge revenue. Okay, so let's talk about the solo practice later. Let's move on to group practice. So naturally, a lot of times, birds of the same feather, like us surgeons, we tend to flock together. Okay, when you combine all the expertises, and then people who are experienced in different segments, there's a combined effort. There's a lot of thought sharing. So in a given patient, you can run it back and forth and say, okay, I thought this one. What do you think? Or even in the theater, let's say you're faced with a difficult anatomy, and then you wanted second person take a look and give you that comfort factor that is there. And also, with all this, having two surgeons at the cost of one surgeon in a group practice, the patient benefits. They get a lot of benefit and a lot of positive results. Definitely, that is going to give a lot of positive remarks towards your practice, and gives you that much a positive in people's eyes, that you're doing a very good work. Okay. In group practice, there's definitely a lot of cost sharing. So overheads, the nursing, the staff, the salaries, the utilities, etc. There's a lot of cost that piles up over a course of time. All that is shared among 2 to 3 people, or more people if they are in the group. The staff, infrastructure cost, and you'll have plenty of cross coverage. That is very important. And you'll have protected time off. Let's say if you want to take a weekend completely off with your family. In a solo practice, you wouldn't be able to do that. But if you, in a group practice, you can have your fellow group member cover the practice, and then you are completely off. So that is wonderful to have. Also, you'll be able to cover multiple hospitals. You're not limited to one hospital, because you cannot move, especially in cities like Bombay. You can't really move around much with the traffic the way it is. So if you're a few group members, then you can cover multiple facilities, and actually that generates a lot of revenue. And larger the group, you have higher power to negotiate, whether you're negotiating with the hospital for a better revenue from them, or a better cut in the part of your entire package. Let's say 100 rupees is your package. You can claim more by being a larger group. You have better negotiating power. Also, you can take a group indemnity. You can take solo indemnity also, but group indemnity, you can purchase, where you can, as a solo practitioner, you can buy 1 crore worth. You can buy 10 crores worth in a group, and all that can be shared. Okay, and the risk is also shared. Definitely, group practice gives you better work-life balance. So you're not running around helter-skelter trying to go here, go there, and you're operating in one hospital. And from another hospital, the patient calls saying that the one that you just operated on has some issue, and then you have to run there. And you'll have a lot of sleepless nights and stress. You can avoid all that, which is present in the solo practice. Whereas in a group practice, your fellow group members can help you out. Definitely, there's less control and flexibility in group practice, because anything that you would want to do, whether marketing or purchasing anything, it is up for discussion in your group. So you have to be prepared for that. There are always going to be differences in opinion. So you'll have to work through that in a group practice. And the major differences occur where people are trying to figure out who owns that case, who gets paid for that given case. So the way I like to approach is that in a group practice is that whoever sees that patient for the first time, if you are adequately equipped to do the case, that belongs to that particular surgeon. Let's say in a group of 4 or 5, if one person sees the patient on their time, that patient stays with them, he or she operates and they follow up, and that revenue also goes to that particular person. This particular model has least amount of friction and complications in a group practice. So the other model is that whether you do as a primary surgeon or a rotation basis, meaning you are rotating around different hospitals and then you've seen a patient in hospital X, and the next day you have gone to hospital Y, but the patient you have seen in hospital X is now ready for surgery the next day. So at that time, your partner is there in that hospital. So it ends up that where your hospital, in that hospital, your partner may end up operating on that patient. There is, if you can build that positive attitude very well, it's wonderful. If not, sometimes there's a lot of patient dissatisfaction because they have seen you for the procedure, but the surgery is done by another doctor, and there is a higher chances for litigation in those situations. So ideally, if you see a patient, you stick to the patient and you operate, and then you follow. That belongs to your patient. The patient belongs to you, and the revenue also belongs to you. That by far is the least complicated plan in a group practice. So also in group practice, there are two modes, whether it is a single group practice or single specialty or multiple specialties. Okay. So you have to understand that anytime you look into group practice, people are very open-minded, just as long as they're like the ones that they're used to. You can't throw a new idea and then get them used to it. So in a group practice, that seems to be one of the problems. If it's a single practice, meaning there are 3, 4 surgeons who are working together, it's a good combination, but then you're limited to that one specialty. So your exposure is limited, your reach is limited. Whereas if you have multiple specialists like internal medicine, gastroenterologist, pulmonologist, cardiologist, all these guys are also there in your group, then when a person comes in approaching you for a surgery, you need a pulmonary or a cardiac clearance, everything is in-house. And it's such that because you have such a diversified portfolio of specialties, patient doesn't go outside of your practice. They stay right there. And you can definitely get better revenue because all the revenue is staying inside your group. Now, having medical practitioners in your group definitely gives you larger reach because they see a lot more patients than you would as a surgeon. So that number of footfalls coming in, you're also exposed to all these things. All these people know that you're also there and you're the surgeon for the group. So naturally, it gives you a lot of credibility, and a lot of cross consultations are possible, meaning a patient comes in to a pulmonologist for a different reason, but then the pulmonologist, the doctor sees that there's some surgical problem like a hernia, then he or she would refer them to you. Then you get a cross consultation. And your fellow practitioners can also upsell you, meaning they can say, wow, that surgeon is really good. I mean, I've seen his work, fantastic. So they can upsell you. So it gives you that instant credibility. So there are like a bunch of salesmen working for you, right? So definitely all this leads to increased in-house revenue. So all that, the top line, the total amount of money you make is going up substantially. And being a group, unlike solo practice where you can't afford to have your own lab, diagnostics, and pharmacy, in a group practice, you can afford to have all that because you can employ your lab technicians, run your own lab, get additional revenue through that, even pharmacy. So a lot of times your entire practice cost comes from your pharmacy and lab and diagnostics. So all the money that you make in your personal practice, you actually take it home without any additional expenses. Okay. So definitely shared overheads in a group practice helps you. But there are always going to be some opinion differences. So the way a cardiologist thinks, a gastroenterologist thinks, a surgeon thinks is totally different. So you have to figure out a way of coming together and working together. There'll always be, as the group gets older and older, there'll be groupism and there'll be power clashes as to who controls what. So these are all things that negatives in group practice. Now, revenue sharing, this is one of the questions I get asked quite frequently, is that how do you share the revenue? There are a bunch of models out there, but most commonly I can break it down to 3 modes. One is there's a boss and you have members in the group. There are all bosses, no members, all bosses, and there are all members, there are no bosses. So this is how it works. I'll explain those things. Boss with members is that you, younger surgeons, you're joining a senior surgeon's practice. So quote unquote boss, and you have junior surgeons who are joining together. Everybody's joining forces. And then the fresh starting doctors, the surgeons, can go for either a fixed pay or a variable pay or a hybrid pay. Meaning, fixed pay is that you take X amount home, whether you do work, whether you produce, you're not, by being there, you get a fixed amount of pay. And then the variable pay is that once you have achieved the production of certain amount of fixed amount of pay, whatever additional amount you generate, you can take a percentage of that. But having run for running the practice, the group will take a certain cut out of that revenue, but most of it comes to you, right? That there are hybrid models also like that. You can take part fixed and part variable. So one of the things is that you never should take your fixed pay too high where it makes you complacent. So whether you do or you don't, you still have that amount of money that is coming into your account every month that creates a lot of complacency. And for a young surgeon who's out there trying to make a mark and make a name, you should never be complacent. You should have a lot of fire in the belly. You should be out there marketing yourself, making a name for yourself, meeting people, writing articles, trying to publish them, being on TV shows, organizing maybe CME events when the whole COVID thing disappears, or doing online Zoom meetings like this. A lot of things. You should be very aggressive when you're trying to build your own practice, right? That is one model, which is having a boss and members, right? Where most of the decisions are made by the boss, but everything is mutually beneficial. Second model is all our bosses. So each one of the group members, they have their own particular specialty. Let's talk about our own group. I'm into bariatric surgery. One person is into advanced or abdominal wall reconstruction. One is into breast, rectal, and general surgery. And we all are into things together, but each of us, we take a niche. So, and we continue to build that. So we're all there, but we are manning different segments of the surgery. So there is no competition between. There will be an overlap at some point in time. It's inevitable. But for the most part, if you can avoid that overlap, that'll be very beneficial. In the all our bosses model, you go with a rotatory administration, meaning for a specific period of time, one member of the group will be the boss, meaning they will decide who is going where, which hospital they're covering, what they're practicing, etc., will be manned by one person. The next tenure, maybe next year, the second person covers. Then the following year, the third person covers. Like that, it keeps changing each year. Rotationary rota basis. One person becomes the boss, rest of everybody is there. But all our bosses, you get together and you decide the direction of the practice and how you share the revenue. The other one is all our members, and it's independent, meaning you are there as all our members, you have your own practices, you're just sharing the cost, meaning you have a practice location, you have the overheads, you have the staff, you have utilities, etc., the licensing, the expenditure, etc. You share that expenses, but you have your own practices. That is, you're all members, you're independent, you run your own practices. But it all depends on how the frequencies are and how you guys get along, at what stage of practice you are in. For them to be all members or all bosses, you need to be at a equal par. If there's a significant difference between your senior surgeon and yourself, then the model goes to the boss and the members kind of thing. So, but whatever works for the group, for the betterment of the group, that's what one should choose and go ahead with that. Okay. Having a private group versus hospital-based. If you're a private group, definitely most of the decisions lie within the group, how you want to share the revenue or how you want to spend your money, etc. If it is hospital-based, again, your hospital administration also will come in and they'll have a say in that. So that you need to be cautious about. Practicing in harmony, okay? Again, happiness is not a matter of intensity, but of balance, order, rhythm, and harmony, okay? So it's very important when you practice, you have to be in harmony with the rest of the group members. Otherwise, quickly things will fall out. You should always be ready to give where you want, where you have to, take where you need to, and practice sharing. Sharing is very important. In a discussion or argument, some you win, some you lose, and be prepared for that also. In the interest of larger interest of the group, sometimes you may choose to lose. That's not bad because you're looking at the higher good. Okay, having a best surgeon in the group versus an understanding group member, I'd rather go with the understanding group member than having the best surgeon, because there's going to be a lot of ego clashes, and a lot of issues that will crop up, especially if you're planning to have a very harmonious group practice. Okay, so having understanding and cooperative members leads to very successful group practice. Have very good interpersonal relationships, and a lot of times people have a habit of speaking bad when person is not there. A lot of times what happens, these words get around. It's like Chinese whisper. So you say something, people add a little bit more masala to that, and it goes to the third person, and then finally to the person who's in question, and they get all upset. So these kind of things, they tear apart group practices. So where you have to, if you can, say something good. If you can't say something good about your partner, don't say anything at all. Okay? Practice that, it'll help you a lot. And a lot of times there's going to be grouping and scheming and jealousy in group, especially if the group is getting richer and richer. So that is also something you need to be able to manage by keeping it everything in the open, having group discussions. If you bunch of guys get together, have a drink and hash things out. Get your families involved also, because you're whatever you're doing it for a long haul. And in a group practice, you don't have to necessarily invest all of your money into practice. You can also take the money out and invest into real estate. You can invest into stock market, which all of you agree upon. You can invest into granite for you care, or for all you care, or you can invest into a new a commercial structure which generates additional revenue into the practice. So you can diversify your portfolio once you start generating that kind of money in your practice. So as a new practitioner, you need to understand what is your worth. And it's a very important time for introspection. A lot of times people, you have to forget what you feel you're worth and remember what you deserve. Okay, it's very important. A lot of times you feel that, okay, I just came out, I only deserve this much, I don't need that much. This kind of thought process exists. Or another thing I've heard is that, yeah, I've seen in that hospital, all the patients are very poor. I don't think they can afford that much, so I'm going to charge less. So that is not the way you work. You have to have a set standards of your charges, or whether the salary that you want to take home, etc. You have to have a certain standard. With maybe a 5 to 10% standard deviation is acceptable. Okay, but you cannot go from a 1,000 rupees consultation fee to 300 rupee consultation fee. That kind of a jump you should not do. Okay, so knowing yourself, your strengths and weaknesses is very important. More than strength, you should know your weaknesses. Okay, if you are a very good laparoscopic surgeon, that is your strength. If you're not a very good laparoscopic surgeon, but you can manage a lot of open cases, can be a part weakness, because now the whole thing is going into laparoscopic and minimal invasive and robotic. So this is the kind of things that you need to identify. Let's say if you are super strong in hernia repair, but you're weak in, say, for example, bariatric. So you need to kind of understand your strengths and weaknesses. And over a course of time in the group, you fortify your weaknesses. So basically what happens is that, for example, myself, I'm decent with bariatric, but I'm not so great with abdominal wall reconstruction. So I plan to learn that and hone my skills gradually with the help of my team member, and vice versa, right? Always discussing with peers about what it is a right amount of money that you want, and understanding the geographical variations, whether you're living in Bombay versus Hyderabad versus Bangalore, the cost of living you need to understand. And also you need to figure out what is your true goal, whether you want fame, expertise, or money. So my advice is that don't run behind money. If you run behind expertise and fame, money will follow. It's like osmosis. Wherever there is fame and expertise, the money will follow. So chase those two things. Build your own brand, take some time, and do good presentations, have good diction when you speak with or when you connect with people. Make sure that they remember you, okay? That you have to create that good first impression. Also, another way of making a mark is that when you operate, I'm not saying do like a very fast and careless surgery, but you need to operate, not take too much time. Yes, you're doing it in the very beginning as a consultant, doing surgeries on your own, but you need to be careful in not taking too much time, because the team in the hospital, in the theater, the anesthetist, they'll speak poorly of you if you're taking too much. Let's say if you have done a gallbladder fantastically well, defined everything, but you have taken like 1.5 hours to do a gallbladder. So that kind of goes against you, right? So these are the things when you're building your own brand, you need to be cognizant. Every person that you come across, they should be impressed with you. That's the way you present yourself, okay? And sometimes people try to get into a lot of things, okay? They want to get into, say, laparoscopy, they want to get into anorectal, they want to get into hernia, they want to get into something or else. So multiple things. So you actually lose definition as to who you are. So instead of being jack of all trades, try to hone that one or two skills and really push yourself into that. Okay, play to your strengths. That's where you really make your mark. Okay, and how much money you need, you always reverse calculate. See how much rent it is, how much it costs you to run the car, what you need for a comfortable living, etc., etc. Factor all those things in and add another 20% and say, yes, this is the basic minimum I want from a practice, right? As a salary or a salary guarantee. So then that is what you seek from the group, that you say that, okay, fine, this is what amount I want. This is how you reverse calculate. So for some of you who don't know what salary guarantee versus salary is, that salary means you get fixed income, whether you do, you don't, or you do too much also, you still get the same amount of money. That is salary. Salary guarantee is that we guarantee you X amount of money. Let's say you're guaranteed 2 lakh rupees a month. So the month you produce less than the 2 lakhs, even then you get 2 lakhs. But if you only generated 1.5, but there's a 15,000 rupees of lag, that you would have to cover up down the road. Okay, with you, when your practice picks up, you'll have to cover that up. That is called salary guarantee. Okay, and understanding the percentages. So that is completely different animal. I'll briefly broach that with you guys. So the way you figure it out is that if you're discussing with a hospital, 100 rupees is your package, and how much should a surgeon get? Typically, anywhere between 28 to 35% is a very healthy professional fee to get. Okay, there will be at least 65 to 70% of costs, etc., that hospital would want to capture. So whenever you negotiate, if you can get that kind of percentage from a hospital, that's wonderful. At the same time, if you are functioning in a group and group has costs, so even then what you can do is that the 100 rupees comes into practice, but you can take the 32 to 35 rupees for every 100 that you bring in as your professional fee, but the other 65 or 70 rupees goes into practice. That is also indirectly your income. That is also going into that big kitty, which eventually gets spent on improving the practice conditions or buying new equipment or recruiting another person or doing more marketing, etc. All these things will come into play there. Okay, so definitely understand that you need to know what it is that you're worth, and don't feel that you deserve less. Okay, so make sure that you get what you deserve. Art of discussion. Again, aim of any argument or discussion should not be victory, but progress. Okay, whenever you are sitting down for a discussion, make sure that in a discussion, you must be able to convey what it is that you want. Okay, a lot of times people don't voice what they want or what you need. Okay, if you don't do that, then you will walk away from that discussion unhappy. At the same time, you need to understand what it is the other party wants or needs from you. So once you have these two completely understood, and then next part of the discussion should be a plan of action. Okay, you're going to meet in a week, or you're going to have come back with the email discussing these terms, or something like that. There should be a plan of action at the end of every discussion. So if you had a lengthy discussion, but you walk away from the discussion without a plan of action, then that is a poor discussion. Okay, so understand what you need, understand what they want, and have a plan of action. Okay, this is very important when you have this discussion with corporate hospitals, whether you're buying equipment from dealers or manufacturers, or if you're discussing your unfortunate practices in India is that you have to pay the cut practices. Okay, whatever you make, you give a percentage to some people who are the referral sources, right? With, it could be RMPs, could be fellow doctors, and lately you have a lot of patient aggregating softwares and online platforms like Practo, etc. Okay, so they all take their cut. So you need to be able to negotiate and have a proper discussion with all these people. So these three principles will truly help you anywhere and everywhere, wherever you go. Okay. Now, art of negotiation is very important again. You never should negotiate out of fear, but you should never fear to negotiate. Okay, it's very important. So, art of negotiation, whenever you go, wherever you go, dress like you mean business. Okay, you cannot go in pair of scrubs and start negotiating like a crores of rupees worth of deal. It doesn't happen. Okay, you dress like you mean business. And the most important trip you will take in any negotiation is trying to meet the people halfway. Okay, that is where most of the deals are made. Okay, you should never go entirely in favor of the other person, nor should it come entirely in your favor. It should be somewhere in the midway. A good negotiation is that where both parties are unhappy. Okay, if one party is happy, another party is unhappy, that is a bad negotiation. Both parties should be unhappy. That is the right negotiation. Okay. And don't ever enter any negotiation to conclude. Don't say that, okay, no, I need this. Let me sit there and whatever cost may be, let me just conclude it and get this thing done. No, don't do that. Okay. Prepare to get up and walk away. That is very important. Okay. Know what you want in a negotiation and what you can live without. Okay. So if you know what you want, you go after it and get that thing done in a negotiation. All right. Also think about what the other person is looking for. Once you understand what the other person is looking for, you can actually change your approach. Let's say if the other person wants your surgical services, but they're not really able to afford that upfront payment to you, then what you say is that, okay, fine, you don't pay much upfront or don't pay me at all, but I will take larger percentage as surgeon's fee because I'm putting in time, I'm putting in my experience and expertise, and I'm taking the exposure to legalities, doing surgeries in your facility. So I'll take more percentage. So instead of 35, you may take 40% as your professional fee, wherein they're not able to pay you anything upfront. Or some other team may come, they pay you upfront more. Let's say for your services, they'll pay you 2 lakh rupees upfront every month as a retainer. Then you can say, okay, fine, I'm okay with 25% as a professional fee also. So these are the things that you kind of modulate when you negotiate. Okay. Now, whenever you negotiate, don't just focus on money. Okay. Focus on quality of life, the kind of learning experience that facility or the group will offer you, what facilities are there to do your surgeries and equipment, etc. Also, if the existing practice or the hospital has decent brand value is very important because it will rub off you, especially as a new practitioner. If you're coming into the market, if by being with a good brand, named brand, definitely you get instant credibility. Okay, they should be, the practice or the hospital should be willing to invest into equipment that you require, and also make sure that the boss or the senior surgeon whom you're joining doesn't overshadow you. I've seen some practices where the routine gallbladder surgery, people will be just looking over the junior's shoulder saying that, don't do this, cut that, dissect this, doing all that. Just to be able to get free hand to do your surgeries is priceless. And a group or a hospital should be open to your ideas. These are all additional factors you should look into when you're negotiating, and don't just look into just money. They may pay you a lot of money, but you'll be like a prisoner and you will not thrive. So instead, you might as well take a little less money, but be able to, blossom in the practice and then make your own mark, right? So that comes to the end of my talk. So again, I want to say, gardens are not made by singing, oh, how beautiful, and sitting in the shade, but you got to get out there and use your tools and start working. So that's when you get a really wonderful garden, or in this situation, you have a beautiful practice and you make a mark, make your own brand in your practice. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my slides. 1 second.
Thank you. That was exactly what is needed. I think you did justice to the talk, and there are a lot of compliments coming in. Very well spoken. This should be taught in medical colleges, and extremely practical, no sugarcoating. This is what we need. And over on the Facebook page on the live stream, Dr. Girija Sharma has actually chimed in, saying that some impressive messages were shared. So you covered a lot of the topics beyond the ones that people would normally concentrate upon, which is just the finances and whether you should involve different specialties. I think this was superb.
Thank you, Eham.
Guys, would anyone have any specific questions for NK? I know he has to take our leave. He has some patients waiting. If there's no questions, you did an amazing job.
Good, wonderful. So should you guys have any questions, I'm available to you privately. So I'll take your leave. Thank you very much, Eham, and all of you for patient listening. Take care.
Thank you so much, NK.
Cheers. Bye.
Right. Our next speaker is Dr. Brijesh Dube. Can you please switch on your video?
You have stopped my video, boss.
I have stopped your video. How is that possible? All right, there you go.
Yeah.
You've
Have gone
disappeared again,
again.
my friend.
Host has stopped it.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, you're back. Superb. So, Brijesh is a part of the AWRSC Young Turks executive team. Like a lot of us in the Young Turks, he's also benefited from mentoring by several senior surgeons all over the country. There's so much back and forth with information and skills that is going on in today's day and age that I think having a good mentor around is almost a necessity. And Brijesh is going to talk about not just how to find a good mentor, but how to hold on to him or her, which I think is more important. What say?
Okay. So I'll be sharing my screen now.
Sure thing.
Where is this? Yeah. Just 1 second. Okay. Good evening, friends. I'll be talking on mentoring. What, why, how, everything. So, as we know, there's a Chinese proverb, a single conversation across the table with a wise man is always worth a month's study of books. So, the story of mentor starts is coming from Homer's Odyssey. So Odysseus is a king who goes on to a war, and he entrusts the care of his household to Mentor, who serves as a teacher and overseer of Odysseus' son, Telemachus. So from there, the concept of mentor comes. So what is a mentor? He's an experienced and trusted advisor who trains and guides a less experienced person. So, yeah, why do I need a mentor? Because of experience. Mentor possesses what we currently lack. That's experience, network. That is, he can connect us to a right people, personal, social, professional, all aspects of life. He he's the support system to us. He speaks on our behalf, recommends us to a new role, new opportunity. So, how do I find a mentor? So, we should know our goal, short term and long term. We have, the more specific we are in our goals, it is easier to find a mentor. We have to work very smart to create an effective and easily achievable goal. So we have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound goals. So who do we look up to as a mentor? So he could be inside or outside our work practice. Who is our immediate role model? We have to do research well. We should take notes on how that person has gone about getting to where he is right now. We have to be cognizant of our existing network. So, because if we don't know him personally, we have to look for a connection. And we have to recognize a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor is never a sponsor, of course. So, how do we ask that person? We can just meet him informally over a cup of coffee, discuss our goals trajectory before asking them to be our mentor, mention what we like about his work. Talking about him will show that you have a thorough and thoughtful approach about it. And always be ready with your elevator pitch and be clear of your goals and why this person is the right mentor for you. If it is through an email, ask for an informational interview. Be very specific and why you want to meet him and why him talking to you is worth his time. We have to keep in mind about that other person's schedule. A video call in this COVID time is always fine. So when a student is ready, master will always appear. Stages of mentoring. There are 4 stages: initiation, cultivation, separation, and redefinition. The first one is initiation stage. It is always the shortest one. Here, the relationship is established. There is an introduction. We define goals and share informations with them. It is the shortest phase of your relationship. You have to clarify your values, the values you respect. He respects the interpersonal preferences, whether you want a hands-on or a gentle guidance. You have to clarify your needs, whether you want knowledge, skill, confidence level, opportunities. Have to have a very clear vision, your goals, short term, 1 month, 3 months, or a year. Be very specific what you want by what time. That will always help. Then cultivation stage. In cultivation stage is when mentor starts providing you the advice and guidance. The mentee, he develops the skill, gains broader understanding of his role, career path, and professional development. Protege works and mentor supports his effort. During the cultivation stage, the relationship is at a very high priority. Everybody needs to know their key responsibility and needs. A mutual expectation and goals needs to be defined. Measure your success and progress. Confidentiality needs to be maintained. Frequency of meeting needs to be decided. Separation stage. In this, when goals are reached, knowledge is shared, the priorities or availability changes. It can be initiated by the mentor, mentee, or could be a mutual decision. Honest and open communication in this critical phase is very critical. So separation could be a planned move to independence. It could be because of a conflict and moving to another mentor. It could be just sudden and unexpected. Redefinition. A redefining stage is when two professionals become more like peers. The new professional roles of the individual may continue indefinitely. So there are certain do's and don'ts for the mentees here. Okay? Set very specific goals and expectations. Communicate very clearly. Be proactive. Treat your mentor professionally and in ethical fashion. Be thoughtful and sensitive about his feelings and time. Maintain a distinct boundary. Don'ts include, don't expect mentor to make decisions for you. Don't take advantage of him. Just respect his time and help. Don't gossip about your mentor. Don't take rejection of a mentoring request very personally. So one mentor can't help you in achieving all the goals. So you can try having multiple mentors for different aspects of your requirement, or you can have a board of mentors. There are few potential areas which can come. I'm going to enumerate those problems. So it could be a mismatch of mentor and mentee. Now this mismatch could be a mismatch of your expectations or expectations from mentor and mentee, a reluctant mentor or a mentee, overzealous mentee, of course, relationship is not valued, gender mismatch, cultural mismatch, race mismatch, and emotional involvement. And it is not very sure the problem is with the mentee or the mentor, of course. The problem area is also maintaining your confidentiality. So if there is any conflict of interest, you have to be very open about it. If there is an impact on others around you, there is an obstruction or conflict from others, parameters and boundaries are not agreed in advance. Other problems are there is a personal incompatibility of mentor and mentee, frustration of time and workload, impact of shifting and difficulty with access, and difficulty in sustaining sufficient number of mentors. There is a lack of cooperation from colleagues may also affect your mentor. So you cannot teach a man anything. You can always help him finding within himself. Thank you. I can stop sharing now.
Yes, Brijesh.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for them. Some very valid points. Like for one thing that I found really interesting was the cold email. Like I wouldn't have actually thought it's worth reaching out to people just like that. Has it ever worked for you or anyone you know?
Email, not really, but yes, messages, WhatsApp messages nowadays are of great help.
I find email to be a very professional tool that somehow we don't end up utilizing in our part of the world. Like if you look at what
Yeah,
goes
in
on
our
in
part
the
of the world,
West,
yeah.
uh,
Yes.
they are coordinating and planning all of this via email, but we somehow land up missing it altogether. And yeah, I think that's a good thing that we should be utilizing more often now.
Yes, of course.
All right, superb. If there are any questions, now would be a great time to throw them to Brijesh. Otherwise, we can go over to my talk.
I think go
All
ahead.
right. I think you covered everything. Oops. I've opened
We
my
saw a
video
lot of
editor
things.
by mistake. I'm sorry.
Saw a lot of your things on your computer.
Yeah, just my Facebook page. It's okay, nothing that great. I don't lead an exciting a life as you do. All right. Superb. Uh, so the session that you're seeing right now is originally a part of the IHC 2020 event, which, as we all know right now, was an unfortunate casualty of the COVID pandemic. When the entire set of 10 odd topics was floated to the speakers, everything got taken up super fast, and work-life balance was the only one left behind, which tells you this is not something that everyone is very comfortable diving into or speaking about, myself included. Despite my several attempts at trying to achieve work-life harmony, this exercise is, how would I call it, like a work in progress. But like all endeavors worth pursuing, I'm glad I've started, no matter how late or feeble my initial attempts may have been. In a nutshell, I don't have a lot of answers, at least not yet, but I can ask you some important questions. To some, these questions will seem very silly, to others, they may be profound. I was recently introduced to the concept of Ikigai by our friend Dr. Soumya Kullar. Ikigai is supposed to be an intersection of your passion, your profession, your vocation, and life mission. That's quite a bit. Uh, but if you go online, you'll see that most casual observers on social media have simplistically equated Ikigai with work. Is your job really supposed to be all of those traits? What if you step back and thought of our job as something that we did to support our true purpose on this world? Have you asked yourself what your purpose on this planet is? I have, and I know it is not making people slimmer and repairing hernias. As much as I enjoy surgery, I don't think it was something that I was put on this earth to do, or at least it's not the only thing I was put here to do. While my questions may appear to implore your spirituality or the perennial existential crisis that is the human condition, these are very important questions. You need to know in which direction to steer your life, or you'll be like a ship adrift at sea without a port. Once you've defined your goals and selected the correct metrics for success, we'll talk about this a little later, we can start working towards them. So I've broken the talk up into a few different subsections. The first of which is we need to talk about what money means to you. If I offered you 100 crores right now to lock you up in a tower until your retirement age, would you take it? You will scoff at this extreme example. The answer is obvious. No. No amount of money is worth your time and life, which is essentially a non-renewable resource, right? It's the only thing you can never get back, your time. But most of us make this trade-off every single day without realizing it. We are woken up abruptly by our alarms to join rush hour traffic. We operate difficult cases. We deal with challenging complications. We deal with demanding patient families and sometimes difficult colleagues. We work so hard, we grind away any semblance of cartilage from our shoulders and hands by the time we're 50. We come home exhausted at the end of the day only to sink into our sofas and binge on Netflix. Does that sound familiar to you? This isn't earning a living. This is earning a dime. We part with our precious time for money that we don't always enjoy well. If you find yourself aching for a few drinks with friends at the weekend, as I often do, or rather I should say did before the COVID pandemic, you need to ask yourself, why are you going out? Are you really going out because you enjoy the company of your friends, or is it simply to blow off steam? Why is it that whenever you make a large purchase, say a fancy watch or car, you soothe your conscience by saying, but I work hard, I deserve this? How much money or how many gadgets do you really need for your fulfillment? I'll tell you, it's just a little more than you have right now. Several surveys from all over the world tell us that when people are asked what sort of yearly salary would be sufficient, people usually reply 50 or 60% more than what they're making right now, irrespective of how poor or rich they are. So everyone aspires for more. There is no magic universal figure that's applicable to everyone. So you need to introspect and ask yourself how much of what financially drains you is actually necessary and how much is influenced by societal pressures. To paraphrase Robert Quellen, who was an American comedian, I think in the 1920s, we spend money that we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. This is why, despite an increasing average income, most people in developed countries find themselves in crippling debt. The more we spend on crap, the more we obviously need to work to cover the expenses. So, welcome to a concept that has changed the way I view my spending, the hedonic treadmill. This is a psychological concept that tells us that most human beings have a pretty stable level of contentment or happiness. So, for example, if I asked you to rate how happy you are at this moment, you would probably say a 7. This increases to a 9 or 10 when you've won the lottery, had great sex, or you've done an ETEP TAR. But very soon you'll come back to somewhere around a 7. No matter how much you have or achieve, you're going to fall prey to the hedonic treadmill. You will always find something that is just beyond your reach, and that's going to keep seducing you and calling out to you, making you unhappy till you acquire it. Nothing will ever be enough until you stop trying to run after the proverbial carrot. Now, I can't define what enough is for you, but for me, enough means having enough in my wallet so that I don't have to look at the price tags of mundane items when I go shopping. Full disclosure, I don't go shopping for fast cars or Rolexes. All right. When you're trying to think of enough, question how many of your needs are actually your needs and how much of it is actually due to advertising, social media, peer pressure. Think back to the hedonic treadmill. Happiness from material possessions is fleeting. Now, we know from experience, collectively as a species, that lasting happiness has pretty consistent contributors, irrespective of what you do for a living and where in the world you live. These contributors are friendship, good health, a feeling of community, and this sort of feeling that you're overcoming challenges. Earning a dime is not living. To quote the author Vicky Robin, whose book Your Money or Your Life I would highly recommend to anybody watching this right now. Work has ceased being a means to an end and has become an end to itself. We are all very proud surgeons. We all know we belong to a noble profession. We have toiled really long and hard to be here. As a result, look at everything we expect from our work. We want meaning, we want justification, friendship, respect, purpose, all of this and eternal salvation. We seek this in work rather than family or religion. Remember that saying, work is worship? I think it may very well be in the 21st century. If I asked you the old cliched questions, what is your passion? What is your purpose? What will you leave behind when you're gone? Our answers will more and more relate to work. This can't be healthy if work is our only legacy. Everyone here would have heard these phrases, right? Hashtag Monday Blues, hashtag Weekend Warrior, hashtag TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. It is incidentally Friday today, by the way. But I don't want to be the type of person who dies Monday through Friday only to survive or live on the weekend. I don't want to live 2 days a week. We should be working to support our own idea of happiness. We shouldn't be working at the cost of our happiness. The harsh reality is that there are several million people all over the world who are, in essence, leading lives of quiet desperation, So many of you, your family or friends will be having this background hum of low grade anxiety with sporadic peaks added on for good measure. Now, it's important to determine whose liability or responsibility this is. You can't blame your boss for asking you to stay in after hours if you don't have the courage to speak with them about this intrusion into your personal space. Stop blaming your colleagues for making you unproductive if it's you who actually entertains them during work hours. Your department, your hospital, your government, your God does not care about your work life balance. And honestly, if you don't take charge and define the landscape of your life, someone else will come and design it for you. And honestly, it's not going to be to your liking. We need to stop ourselves from falling prey to the thought, I'll rest when I'll retire. When the kids are grown up, I will ease up and I'll stop when my house is paid off. Remember, life is so uncertain. Tomorrow is a very precarious place to pin all your hopes. And you can quote me there. I feel the last few months have made this uncertainty really, really apparent. I'll end this section by asking you one last cliched question. What is the most common deathbed regret? Is it, I wish I would have spent more time at work? Now, there's a problem with medicine. I have a theory. Doctors lag behind their counterparts in business, engineering, law, almost every other professional stream. This is largely, I feel, because of our longer undergraduate courses. The MBBS is the longest UG degree in our country that at least I know of. And while most of our friends from school in their early 20s were transitioning into further studies or getting jobs, some of us in medicine were struggling to get into post graduation. There are so many exams to give, a lot of court cases every year, hoops to jump through, and definitely some years exhausted trying to get to the next step of the academic ladder. All this time, our friends were out in the real world. They were learning how to be an adult. What were we doing? We were struggling on our own academic version of the hedonic treadmill. I just want to get into MBBS, my life will be set. एक बार MS मिल जाएगा ना, everything will fall into place. Just 3 more years of an MCH and I'm going to be ready. Abhi, just this short fellowship is remaining, then I'll start practice. So see, very much like this hamster who's going nowhere, we keep thinking that happiness and fulfillment seem to be just one more degree away. And that's not the case. We stay students into our late 20s and early 30s while our friends from school are already ahead by some distance in their careers. These guys have accomplishments that they can call their own. They have career capital that they can exchange for more autonomy and control over their time. These guys are progressing socially, they are becoming financially astute, they're planning for the future while we are still coming to terms with our present. So, as doctors, we have a lot of catching up to do. In search of perfect, not the perfect partner, mind you. All right. Even when we do find the perfect job, we are at an amazing hospital, great patient flow, great co-workers. We are doing meaningful, cutting-edge surgeries. You're done a scola in the morning, you're doing an ETEP in the evening. We are still earning a dime unless workplace fulfillment is mirrored by personal growth. Remember, there are always going to be needs that a job, no matter how great, is going to be unable to fulfill. It's community, it's meaning in life, it's lasting fulfillment, and leaving behind a legacy. No job is going to be perfect, but we know what makes one good. Cal Newport, who's author of some of my favorite books, but I'm going to quote what he said in So Good They Can't Ignore You here. He says there are 3 nutriments for job satisfaction. Competence, because if you don't feel competent at what you're doing, you're going to be anxious. You'll be feeling inadequate the entire time, and that's no good. You need to have personal connection at your job. To be truly satisfied, you want a team around you who's pleasant to be around. NK made a great point about this in his talk on group practice. And the last thing that you want is, or rather, I would say the most important thing that you want is autonomy. Newport calls this the magic elixir of any job. You do better work and feel happier when you have autonomy and you aren't being micromanaged by someone on top. So if you look at these 3 options, competence, personal connection, and autonomy, you'll realize that you need to be in a job for a longer duration to get these 3. If you've been working in the same job profile for some time, you improve your skills. So you become competent. With time, your relationships at work flourish, your colleagues and clients trust your work, and they give you more autonomy. So I know it's difficult, especially in surgery, to walk into a new program or department and be given free rein. But don't start a job that doesn't hold the promise of these nutriments. Before you join, you need to look at the people who are working in that department. How long they've been there, what kind of work they are doing, what their general demeanor is around. If you see people with a mediocre skill set and there's a high attrition of surgeons, means people just go in and out of that practice, like there's a revolving door out there, that isn't going to be the right place for you. But if the ingredients of a good job are all there, you need to be patient. Don't keep hopping between jobs looking for some sort of perfect soulmate. That's not going to work. While at work, be at work. Time is a very poor proxy for effectiveness. Don't brown nose your superiors by trying to spend more time, trying to stay after hours. Be productive and effective, right? So I'll tell you something really interesting I came about recently. Slack is a very popular instant messaging app that's used by several large businesses across the world. Think of it as WhatsApp dedicated for work. On the walls of the offices at Slack in San Francisco, in bold words, you'll see signs put up saying, "Do your work and go home." Very, very wise words, if you ask me. And I'm going to put that across in our office spaces very soon. No, you can't have it all. Pretty depressing section, but let's get on to it. There's very little pressure for us to improve our personal lives, to actually pay attention uh, to that which should be giving us lasting happiness. Friends, community, families, especially in our part of the world, are very, very accommodating. And often they suffer silently with a scarcity of meaningful time while we are out there chasing our own personal version of happiness at work. Our want for more is really fueled by our consumption of social media. You develop FOMO, or a fear of missing out, seeing what your friends are up to. When I perform a when I watch a well performed surgical video uploaded by a peer, it gives me a feeling of inadequacy. Like, oh my God, that guy's operated so well. That's such a well edited video. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you get the same feeling. Looking at all the several free and easy options there are to advance your craft and highlight it online, you think you can do essentially everything. And since you can do everything, it feels like you're losing out when you're passing up an opportunity. But remember, you can't do it all. There are only 24 hours in the day. In terms of sheer hours, there was a time where I felt I was more married to my job than I was to my wife. In sickness and in health, till death do us part, was not with my wife, it was a part of my job description, which is why I chose to prioritize and seek balance. So, what does balance really mean? Does it mean waking up at 6 a.m., working out, heading for a swim, performing an E-TEP TAR at work, rounding quickly on your patients, no hiccups, no complications, meeting your friends for coffee, heading to the gym, having date night with your partner, reading half a book before falling asleep, and waking up the next day very well rested? No, that is not balance. That is fantasy. Balance is not about cramming everything you need into every day. Balance is about small changes, which at just the right places can improve the quality of your relationships and eventually your happiness. Sorry. So, what is society's consumerist, Instagram fueled definition of success? Is it pockets lined with money? Is it travel abroad to crazy destinations? Is it an amazing number of surgeries? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Remember, people's lives on social media are very, very curated. And just like there's a filter on the pictures, there's a filter on the life because they showcase the best, or at least what they think is best about them. We all have a certain amount of energy and it gets distributed between the different parts of our day based on our choices. So, relying on self discipline to distribute this energy doesn't always work. You're going to develop decision fatigue. What you would want instead is a set of habits and ready obligations that do this for you. Okay, so we'll go to the business end of the presentation, which is how you can develop habits for balance. One is create a vision board. Uh, a lot of people think of a vision board as a nice little board where they put up pictures and pins based on what they like and where they eventually want to be. That could be it for you. But I'll tell you, for me, it was trying to figure out what sort of a practice I want to have when I'm 40 and what sort of life I want. So that was working only 4 to 5 days a week, not working beyond 5 p.m. in the evenings, having weekends free for my family, hopefully being part of a group practice, continuing my hobbies like reading and maybe developing a few more like painting. So when I have this vision, it becomes clear to me what I need to prioritize. If we think that earning money is all we need to do, then we'll land up becoming the type of person who prioritizes our jobs over everything else. And that's not cool. My second advice would be make plans with friends and family in advance. That's superbly important, because if you just keep relying on serendipity to run into old friends and have great evenings, that's not going to happen. I know it's difficult in the COVID pandemic, but let the vaccine come out. Plan in advance. Reach out to someone in a different city or country every weekend. Thankfully, we don't have to travel out of our houses to make trunk calls to reach out to friends in other parts of the world. It's so easy right now with the several messengers and video apps. So reach out to old friends. Don't let those connections fizzle out over a period of time just because of your lethargy. Create a schedule or just maintain a bullet journal. For those of you who don't know what a bullet journal is, I highly suggest you Google it. This is a picture of mine. It's all my daily tasks, my weekly tasks. Apart from this, I also maintain a calendar, and I write down what's interesting, and I break down my projects in my bullet journal. So it's essentially a blank notebook that I fill up based on what is relevant and important to me. And I would highly recommend using this to plan your professional days so that you have more time in your personal life. When you're at work, work with intense focus. Don't do time pass. Don't indulge in frivolous activities. Don't have water cooler talks and excessive needless chais and coffees with your uh, group partners, co-workers, whatever it may be. Do your work and get out. Add one personal item to your schedule every day. So this has been a game changer for me over the past couple of months. I tend to add a walk with my partner or my daughter. I'll say I'm going to read 20 or 30 pages of a book that I'm really enjoying, or I'll listen to an audiobook where I drive, or I'll just go out for a drive. I add one personal item that gives me calm in my day, and that seems to work really well. All right. Before we end, it's really important to say that for work-life balance, you need to know what your identity truly is. There's nothing in your life that's more valuable than time. It's honestly the only thing that once spent, you are never going to get back. You work to lay claim to your personal time, to spend it the way you see fit. You don't work in all of your time. All right. It's clear that we are investing too much of ourselves in our job profile. I have been very guilty of judging others. I'm sorry, I missed a slide, but yeah, essentially giving people time is giving people your love. Yeah. So as I was saying, I have been guilty of judging others based on what they are doing, where they work, what type of work they're doing. But say, what if this is an introductory slide from one of my other presentations? Assistant Professor of General Surgery. What if I was just the Assistant Professor of General Surgery? What if I was just a surgeon? What if you were just a surgeon? Does that have a nice ring to it? I think it would be a woefully incomplete description of who I am, and I need to get rid of it. I am a first-time father to this firecracker who consumes most of my days. I am a dog lover. I am an avid reader with an ever-expanding library. I love going to museums. I'm a world traveler, which most of my travels involve my partner, who I'm glad to say is definitely my better half. I am so much more than just a surgeon. And I'm trying really hard to develop this other side of myself, because professional growth will happen as a function of how great you are at work. Don't let your personal growth stall because you forgot to see that side of yourself. Thank you so much.
सबकी बोलती बंद हो गई.
Ah, Soumya. You can
Hi.
start your video, man.
Hi.
Hi. I hope you
सबकी
like that.
बोलती बंद हो गई. Seriously.
That's awesome.
No,
Thank you so much, my friend.
we really, I think all of us want to do this, but
That was very nice, Eham. Very nice.
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Okay. Don't take so long to assimilate. I've only stated the obvious.
The obvious, which we never really thought about.
See, I can only share my personal experience, right? So, I gave up an MCH seat to continue in general surgery. So I joined immediately at the end of my residency as an assistant professor. So when I started my work in an academic capacity, there was so much pressure on my head that I realized it was pressure that I had put upon myself because I somehow needed to justify giving up an MCH seat. And I needed to do great work. I needed to do more surgeries. And it's like the hedonic treadmill. A few months into my AP position, I did my first fund application. Like, first fund application, brilliant. One hurdle crossed. But the next one didn't feel as great. Then there was a lap AR, and then the following one just somehow didn't make that much sense. Then there was a lap Pius towers and so many other things that kept coming in, like ETEP towers and scolas and massive loss of domain hernias. And I kind of realized that my satisfaction level from every new surgery, every new speaking engagement, academic assignment, paper that got published was kind of diminishing just a little. And my general anxiety was increasing and I wasn't too happy. So at one point, I just kind of realized that I can't. I still work long hours. I can't say that I've completely given up. Like I said, I'm still on my journey, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that I need to develop this. So I was having a discussion with Soumya a few weeks ago. I think it was. I had an epiphany 2 years back. Okay, I can't talk to anyone about anything apart from surgery, and that scared me. Like if somebody asked me, "Hey, Ham, what's up?" Oh, I did a cool surgery the other day. Oh, there's some paper that we're working on. Oh, I heard a good talk at a conference. And that really scared me because I have a lot of friends who are not in medicine or surgery. So what do I discuss with them? So beyond that realization, in 18 months, I finished off like 22 books. And I hadn't read any non-surgical book in like 6 or 7 years before that. So when I was researching the talk and writing it out, it was just, all of my experiences and subliminal anxiety and unhappiness with the way that our work is structured. And there's a lot of peer pressure as well, right? Like you guys would face it a lot. Surgeons are supposed to be hardcore. Surgeons are supposed to be available throughout the day. It's all humbug.
It has been beaten into us. Like you have to work hard. You have to reach this goal.
Nobody's
The other thing
asking
is
anyone not to work hard, but we are judging ourselves too harshly by so the term metrics also I picked up from Mark Manson. He has a great book, right? Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I can see that. My webinar. So he says most of the times we kind of consider ourselves failures or we put too much pressure on ourselves because we choose the wrong metrics for defining success. And that's not right. So yeah, that's about it.
Personally, that is a big worry for me. That what
Soumya
if I
has fastest Amazon delivery in Bangalore. Sorry, Dipti, I cut you off.
That personally, that's a constant thing I worry about. What if I regret when I'm older that I did not do this? So I don't know how to overcome that.
I don't know. Hindsight is 2020. We all have regrets. It's see, the other part of it is if you guys, if any one of us wasn't in surgery, would we have considered ourselves failures? No, right? We would have probably gone on to live the lives that we were meant to in some other professional stream, maybe a lot happier and healthier with stronger shoulders. But when you start viewing surgery as the start and end of your life, like I had an identity crisis. I will not shy away from that. I didn't know who I was for a really long duration. And this was all my doing. I didn't have people around me who were forcing me, who were asking me to do crazy hours. It was just pressure that I had put upon myself. And the more I spoke to my friends and colleagues, I realized they themselves were putting, it's like we are churning ourselves over time, and just being very unfair to our personal lives, our better halves. And yeah, so I think we all have some space to change it.
True.
All right. I don't think there are any questions or anything else to discuss unless somebody wants to throw up another book. Sanju Samuel, would love to know if you found your ikigai. I'll tell you what. I found surgery all consuming up until 11th March this year when my daughter was born. And while surgery consuming me made me very anxious, my daughter consumes me, but it gives me a lot of happiness. So maybe that is my ikigai. Maybe that is what I want to divert my energy towards. So yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe I'll give it all and get into advertising or real estate or something. Who knows? Yeah. I'll share a very interesting conversation with you guys that I had with my friend Jayant, who's a urologist in Nagpur. Now, as is common with a lot of the tier 2 cities, he has his roaring practice where he has to drive to a bunch of different places around the city of Nagpur. So that involves a lot of travel. This guy has 2 kids. He's in practice for a significantly long period of time. And when I met him at last year's Amassicon, just randomly over dinner, he goes and mentions, oh, by the way, I'm starting a restaurant and I've bought land for a coffee shop. And it blew my mind because he was always such a hardcore urologist talking about what the next step was and how he's going to take his career forward. Very nice guy, like, don't get me wrong. Very nice guy, gem of a person. But I always kind of associated with him a lot of like a career driven nature. And I said, what are you doing with a restaurant and a coffee shop? He's like, look, dude, I have worked way too hard. It's getting exhausting. And I want to get to a point where the restaurant and the coffee shop are paying my monthly bills so that I can spend more time with my family and then I can start practicing urology as a hobby. So I can say no to cases and patients and no to travel without worrying too much about the financial implications of it. So since I spoke to him, I realized it's really important in our stream also to become financially literate, which again, we don't care to do. We miss the bus in our 20s.
That
I
should
read
be
more
one
and
of the
more.
upcoming talks, I hope.
I hope, I don't know. Should we get like a very rich middle-aged surgeon to do a talk? I don't know. Maybe one of you guys can talk there. I would love to listen in. Financial management for the 21st century. Yeah.
NK will do that a lot of justice too.
See, I had it in my mind, but I didn't say it. Now I have you on record pushing his name forward. All right. So yeah, we really need to catch up. There's so I don't know if you guys are aware of the FIRE movement. Have you heard of it? Yeah, FIRE is FIRE, Financial Independence Retire Early. So it's this entire movement of people who want to save up as much money as they can so that their savings are giving them enough income over a period of time that they can sustain themselves without a steady job. So if they choose to be employed, it's to keep themselves occupied, not to put food on the plate, which I find really interesting. So retirement at 40 seems a little unlikely for us, but at 50, I don't know. I hope it works. Nice, superb. I think we've actually overstayed our set time. We were supposed to end at 7 p.m. So thank you so much for everyone who stayed around. Please do drop your comments. We are going to be having more such interesting sessions. The next one is going to be how do you build a niche in general surgery, perhaps without an MCH, how you can really win at social media marketing. We have Vishaka, who's going to be talking about women's issues in the surgical practice in our country. Sumanta is going to be taking up insurance, as I mentioned earlier in the evening. So really interesting things that we don't usually discuss. but we need to get the conversation rolling. And I'm hoping seeing these monthly talks, as it turns out, we can generate a lot of good conversation. So thank you once again, guys. Great comments. And thank you so much to Brijesh and NK for being a part of the first Young Turk session. And I will see you guys soon.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.